The ancient and modern battle against anxiety. Anxiety, it's a shadow that follows you, whispers doubts in your ear, makes you question your every move. It tightens your chest, speeds up your heart, and convinces you that something terrible is always about to happen. And in that moment, when your thoughts spiral out of control, you start to believe, maybe this is who I am now. But what if I told you that anxiety, the same force that has haunted humans for centuries, has already been studied, conquered, and controlled? Not just by modern psychologists, but by men who lived over 2,000 years ago, the Stoics. And yet we see people today falling deeper into their fears. Think about Oppenheimer 2023, a brilliant mind, a man who understood the very fabric of the universe, and yet despite all his knowledge, he was at war with himself. After creating the most powerful weapon known to mankind, his mind became his battlefield. The weight of his choices, the fear of what he had unleashed, consumed him. We see it in his eyes, the haunting guilt, the overwhelming pressure, the anxiety that gnaws at him like a predator waiting to strike. He stands in a room full of people cheering for his achievement, yet his mind is already lost in a future he cannot control. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. If only he had been taught what the Stoics knew, that we do not suffer from events themselves, but from our perception of them. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled over the Roman Empire during one of its most turbulent times, understood this deeply. He did not let fear dictate his actions. He did not dwell on what was outside his control. He trained his mind to stay grounded in the present, to detach from fear, to master his emotions instead of letting them master him. Oppenheimer let his thoughts consume him. Marcus Aurelius learned to control his. And today we're going to explore how ancient Stoicism and modern psychology both reveal the key to overcoming anxiety. Because anxiety is not reality, it is a distortion. And if you don't control your mind will control you. So the question is, will you break or will you rise? Chapter 2, The Stoic Mindset. Why your thoughts control your anxiety. Anxiety isn't just a feeling. It's a storm that begins in your mind, shaping how you see the world before you even realize it. It takes everyday moments and twists them into threats. A missed call from a friend? They must be mad at me. A delayed response to your message? I must have said something wrong. A challenge at work? I'm not good enough. Your mind, your greatest weapon, turns against you. But what if I told you, you have the power to stop it? The Stoics understood something modern psychology only recently confirmed, that it's not events that cause suffering, but our perception of them. And nowhere is this clearer than in one of the most emotionally intense films of this year, Dune Part 2, 2024. Think of Paul Atreides, a boy burdened with destiny, haunted by visions of a terrifying future. He sees war, destruction, and betrayal. His mind races ahead, imagining scenarios where he loses everything. And the more he fears it, the more power it has over him. Anxiety thrives on anticipation, on what could happen, not what is happening. But then, in the heart of the desert, surrounded by dangers that could kill him at any moment, Paul is forced to face the ultimate test. The Fremen elders watch as he is given the water of life, a poison that either kills him or transforms him into something greater. His body shakes, his vision blurs, and then his breathing slows. He sees it now. He understands what the Stoics always knew. Fear is only as strong as the power you give it. As Epictetus once said, men are disturbed not by things but by the view which they take of them. Paul lets go. He does not resist the fear, nor does he run from it. He watches it, acknowledges it, and strips it of its power. Just like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, teaches us today. Psychologists call it cognitive reframing, the ability to change the way you see a situation, and in doing so, change how you feel about it. Anxiety isn't about reality, it's about perception. And the moment you realize this, the moment you choose to see life through a Stoic lens, everything changes. Because anxiety does not exist in the present. It exists in the mind's projections of the future, a future that hasn't even happened. And the only way to escape it is to do what Paul Atreides did in the desert, Breathe, observe, let go. The next time your mind races, the next time anxiety whispers its lies, ask yourself, is this happening right now? Or is this just a story I'm telling myself? Because if you can control your perception, you can control everything. Chapter 3. Negative visualization, how Stoicism and science use fear against itself. Fear is the mind killer. You know it. You felt it. That sudden, paralyzing grip of anxiety when your brain convinces you that the worst is about to happen. A failed exam, a lost job, a broken relationship, a public humiliation. And the more you try to push the fear away, the stronger it gets. But what if, instead of running from it, you turned and faced it head on? This is where the Stoics did the unthinkable. Instead of fearing loss, they imagined it happening. Instead of hoping for the best, they prepared for the worst. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. Sounds extreme? Maybe. But this very technique is now backed by modern exposure therapy, the same psychological approach used to treat extreme anxiety and PTSD. By exposing the mind to fear in a controlled way, it loses its power. And nowhere is this lesson more terrifyingly real than in one of this year's most intense films, A Quiet Place, Day 1, 2024. Imagine a world where the moment you make a sound, you die. New York City, once a place of noise, now a graveyard of silence. The people, hunted. The smallest breath, a single misstep, can bring death in an instant. For the survivors, fear is not just a feeling, it's a constant companion. Now, most would try to block out the thought of being caught, refuse to imagine it, push it away. But that is exactly what makes them weaker. The ones who survive, the ones who endure, are the ones who mentally prepare for disaster before it happens. And that is exactly what the Stoics believed. It is in times of security that the spirit should be preparing itself for difficult times. Seneca. They would ask themselves, what if I lost everything tomorrow? What if I was betrayed by the person I trust most? What if I had to survive with nothing? Not to torture themselves, but to train their minds for reality. Because when the worst actually happens, they do not panic, they do not break, they do not drown in despair, they are ready. And so the next time anxiety grips you, do not resist it. Instead, ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? And if it did, how would I survive? Because fear only controls those who refuse to look it in the eye. But when you do, it shrinks, it weakens, it loses its hold over you. The Stoics knew this truth. Science now confirms it, and now you do too. Chapter 4, the dichotomy of control, letting go of what you can't change. Control, it's what we all crave. Control over our future, control over how people treat us, control over what happens next. But life doesn't care about our plans. It throws chaos at us, unexpected losses, betrayals, failures. And when we can't control what's happening, anxiety takes over. You try to predict every outcome, overanalyze every decision, stress over every possibility. But what if I told you, you're wasting your energy? The Stoics had a simple, unshakable rule. There are only two things in life, what you can control and what you can't. Partigam. And once you learn the difference, anxiety loses its grip on you. Sounds easy, right? But tell that to J. Robert Oppenheimer. In Oppenheimer, 2023, we witness a man who shaped history but could not control it. He built the atomic bomb, believing it would end wars. But once it was in the hands of the government, it was no longer his to control. His worst fear came true. His creation was used for destruction beyond his intent. And we see it break him. The weight of what he had done, the guilt of what he could not undo, the world spiraling beyond his grasp. But what if he had known what the Stoics knew? That you can only control your own actions, your own thoughts, your own choices. Not how people react, not how the world responds. Epictetus, a man who was born into slavery and had every reason to feel powerless, said it best. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. You can do the right thing, but you can't control if others appreciate it. You can love deeply, but you can't control if someone stays. You can work hard, but you can't control every outcome. So why waste energy fighting battles you can never win? The secret to inner peace is in this simple shift. Pour all your focus into what is within your control. Let go of everything else. Because the moment you release what you can't change, anxiety begins to fade. The weight lifts, the mind clears, and you finally see the truth. You were never meant to control everything. You were only meant to control yourself. Chapter 5, Mindfulness and the Present Moment. Finding peace in the now. Most people don't live in the present. They are trapped in two prisons, the past and the future. Regret from yesterday, anxiety about tomorrow, a mind constantly somewhere else, replaying memories or crafting worst-case scenarios. And in the process, they miss life itself. The Stoics knew this trap well. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled over the largest empire in the world, wrote in his private journal, "Confine yourself to the present," because he knew the present is the only place where life actually happens. And yet we struggle to be here now. We live like the characters in Past Lives, 2023. A film about two people whose hearts are caught between what was and what could have been. They spend years longing for a different reality, chasing ghosts of past choices, drowning in what-ifs. And when they finally meet again after decades apart, they realize something heartbreaking. The time they spent wishing for another life was time they never fully lived this one. And that's exactly what anxiety does. It pulls you away from where life is actually happening. But modern psychology confirms what the Stoics always knew. Your mind can be trained to return to the present. It's called mindfulness, a simple practice now widely used in therapy that teaches you to detach from obsessive thoughts, anchor yourself in the now, and observe emotions without becoming them. A practice that can be as simple as taking one deep breath and feeling the air fill your lungs, closing your eyes and listening to the sounds around you, holding a warm drink and focusing only on its heat in your hands. A practice so powerful that it can break the cycle of anxiety completely. Because when you bring yourself back to the present moment, you realize something radical. Right now in this exact moment, you are safe. Right now in this exact moment, you are not being judged. Right now in this exact moment, nothing is actually wrong. The past no longer exists. The future hasn't arrived. There is only this breath, this second, this heartbeat, and that is enough. Chapter 6, Journaling and Reflection. How writing your thoughts can help you master them. There is a battle happening in your mind. Your thoughts racing, shifting, endless. Regrets from the past, fears of the future, emotions that rise like waves and pull you under before you even realize what's happening. And when anxiety takes hold, when doubt creeps in, when fear whispers, "You're not enough," your mind can feel like an endless storm. But what if you could step outside of it? What if, instead of being lost inside your thoughts, you could see them clearly as words on a page? The Stoics had a weapon for this. A simple but powerful practice that modern psychology now confirms as one of the most effective tools for mental clarity and emotional control. It's called journaling. And if you think it's just about writing down feelings, you're mistaken. This is a survival tool. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, wrote to himself every single day. Not for others to read, not to sound wise, but to battle his own thoughts. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Journaling is how he found that strength. And we see this same battle in Killers of the Flower Moon, 2023. Molly Burkhart, a woman trapped in a web of betrayal, unable to trust the people closest to her, questioning what's real and what's manipulation. Her world is filled with secrets, lies, uncertainty. And yet, in the moments when she's most alone, she does something simple but profound. She writes. She records her thoughts, her fears, her truths. Because when everything else is chaotic, writing is a way to see clearly, and modern psychology proves it. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most successful anxiety treatments, uses journaling as a method to reframe negative thoughts. When you write down what's haunting you, something incredible happens. You see it for what it really is, just words. You separate yourself from the emotion. You take back control. It's like holding a mirror up to your own mind and realizing, this isn't as overwhelming as it seemed. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, what thoughts are controlling me today? What fear is guiding my decisions? What would a Stoic say to me right now? And write, because once your thoughts leave your head and land on the page, they can no longer own you. Chapter 7, Emotional Detachment. How to master your reactions and free yourself from anxiety. Your emotions are not the enemy. Fear, anger, sadness, these are not weaknesses. They are signals, a survival mechanism designed to protect you. But the problem? Most people don't control their emotions. Their emotions control them. They lash out when they're angry. They break down when they're overwhelmed. They spiral when fear takes hold. And in those moments, they are not free. But the Stoics understood something that modern psychology has only recently confirmed. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of them. You can feel rage without acting on it. You can experience fear without becoming it. You can be surrounded by chaos and remain completely calm. This is what it means to practice emotional detachment. And if you think it's impossible, just watch John Wick. Chapter 4, 2023. A man who has lost everything, his wife, his freedom, his peace. Yet even as he stands face to face with death, he does not react emotionally. His enemies expect him to be afraid, to be reckless, to lose control. But he doesn't. Instead, he breathes, he slows down, he detaches. Because in the end, the most dangerous man is not the one who feels nothing, it's the one who feels everything and still remains in control. This is what the Stoics knew. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. Modern psychology proves this. Therapists use a technique called cognitive diffusion, where instead of saying, I am anxious, you say, I am noticing that I feel anxious. A small shift, but a massive change in perspective. Because once you separate yourself from your emotions, you take away their power over you, and you realize that you don't have to react to every thought. You don't have to believe every fear. You don't have to be controlled by emotions that will pass. So the next time anxiety rises, try this. Step back, observe it. Don't fight it, just watch. Remind yourself, this is not me. This is just a feeling. Breathe, stay still, let it pass. Because true strength is not about never feeling emotion. It's about feeling everything and still remaining in control. Chapter 8, Reframing Failure, How to Turn Setbacks into Strength. Failure. It's the thing we fear most. The moment when everything crumbles, when our effort seems wasted, when the world looks at us and whispers, you weren't good enough. And so we do everything to avoid it. We overthink, we hesitate, we hold back. But what if I told you, failure is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. The Stoics understood something most people never realize, that failure is not an obstacle, it is the way forward. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. In other words, the thing you fear most is the thing that will make you stronger. But don't just take the Stoics' word for it. Look at Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, 2023. Miles Morales, a kid with the weight of the multiverse on his shoulders. At first, he thinks being a hero means never failing, never making mistakes, always knowing what to do. But when he comes face to face with his own fate, he realizes the truth. Every great hero has failed. Every great leader has been knocked down. Every strong person was once at their weakest. The only difference? They got back up. And modern psychology proves it. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, shows that we grow most when we struggle. If you fail and quit, you stay weak. If you fail and try again, you adapt. If you fail enough times, you become unstoppable. So the next time life knocks you down, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can I use this to grow? How would a Stoic see this moment? Because failure is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you are on the right path. And if you keep going, one day the thing that broke you will be the thing that made you. Chapter 9. The Power of Action. Why taking small steps can crush anxiety. Anxiety thrives in inaction. The longer you sit still, overthinking every decision, the stronger it grows. It feeds on hesitation, on delay, on waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. And the more you wait, the more powerless you feel. But the Stoics had a solution, one simple truth that shatters anxiety at its core. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it, Epictetus. In other words, stop thinking, start doing. And nowhere is this lesson clearer than in Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, 2023. Ethan Hunt, a man who has faced impossible odds, impossible enemies, impossible choices. But what makes him unstoppable? He doesn't hesitate. When he stands at the edge of a cliff, he doesn't freeze, wondering about all the ways he could fail. He doesn't let fear dictate his next move. He jumps, because action kills fear every single time. And modern psychology confirms this. Behavioral activation therapy proves that taking even the smallest action toward a goal rewires the brain, breaking the cycle of anxiety and depression. Overwhelmed by work? Just start one task. Afraid to speak up? Say one sentence. Scared to face a challenge? Take one step forward. Because movement creates momentum, and momentum crushes fear. So if anxiety has you trapped, if you feel stuck in your own mind, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do right now? What is the smallest step forward I can take? What would happen if I just acted instead of overthinking? Because when you move, fear has no choice but to fall behind. And before you know it, you'll realize something powerful. The only way out of fear is through it, and action is the key. Chapter 10. The Final Lesson. The Stoic and Scientific Path to a Fearless Mind. Narrator's voice, calm, powerful, wrapping everything together like the climax of a great story. You have learned the lessons. You now understand what the Stoics knew centuries ago and what modern psychology only recently confirmed. Your thoughts create your reality. Fear only controls you if you let it. Failure is not the end, it's a beginning. The present moment is all that truly exists, and the only way to defeat anxiety is to act. But knowing these truths is not enough. You must live them, because philosophy is not about reading, and self-improvement is not about understanding. It is about being. And that brings us to one final lesson, a lesson that is captured in one of this year's most powerful films, The Creator, 2023. A world on the brink, a war between humans and AI, and one man caught between two sides, faced with an impossible choice. Through every battle, every loss, every moment of doubt, he could have surrendered to fear, given up, let anxiety consume him. But instead, he lets go. He embraces uncertainty. He makes peace with the unknown. Because in the end, the greatest strength isn't knowing what will happen next. It's being ready for anything. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics didn't promise a life without struggle. They promised a mind strong enough to handle it. And now, that power is in your hands. So the question is no longer, how do I stop anxiety? The question is, what will I do now? Because anxiety may never disappear, but it doesn't have to control you. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the power. And if you choose to apply it, you will become unshakable. You will become unstoppable. You will become a Stoic. Want to see how Stoicism is used in movies? From Gladiator to Oppenheimer, from Batman to John Wick, Stoic principles shape some of the greatest characters in cinema. In our next video, we'll break down how Stoicism appears in movies and how film characters unknowingly follow the same ancient wisdom that can transform your life. Watch our next video to see Stoicism in action.